Hi, this is Jeff, and this is Photoshop Removing Items. So one of the most common things that we'll be asked to do as a Photoshop professional or hobbyist or photographer is to remove some blemish from our photo. And that's what we're going to try and do in this screencast and tutorial, and there's actually a whole series of tools in Photoshop that allow us to do that. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing I'm going to do is notice that my picture here isn't in the right orientation. So I'm actually going to go up here, I'm going to do Image, and I'm actually going to do image rotation, and I'm going to do now 90 degrees counterclockwise is what I want, and that's actually going to put it in the right orientation. Alright, my image is now in the right orientation, but before we make any changes I want to make sure I'm not destructively doing anything to my image. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look and see, okay, this is my background layer I'm working with, so I want to go to layer, and I want to do duplicate layer. And I want to say, go ahead and call this beach. Alright, I'm going to turn off my lower layer so it doesn't confuse me. I'm just going to turn the eyeball off so I don't see it. So now we're only working with the uppermost layer. Alright, so I want to remove these little bits of material here that seem to be on the beach because they kind of distract the eye and they kind of make it look like it's garbage even when it was kind of a pretty pristine beach. But since you're only seeing this piece of it, they kind of stick out. So let's deal with that. So what I'm going to go over here and do is I'm going to select from this set of tools, and I'm going to select Spot Healing Brush. Then I'm going to go up here and I'm going to check the size of my brush. Right now it's set to 129 pixels. That's about the right size for what I need to do, but if it wasn't, I could simply adjust it here. So let's leave it in about the right spot. Not quite the same, but this will be good enough. And I'm actually then going to come over here and I'm just going to press on the mouse button and move the mouse just a little bit so I cover the entire area with the black kind of selection, and notice the items start to disappear. This tool is pretty smart, so even when I do something big like the seaweed up here, it starts to figure out how to get rid of it. Notice I can't really tell that I've actually removed that much from the image, and I've made this beach look a whole lot more pristine, a whole lot more like how I saw it in my head, looking at the whole area as opposed to the one area that had a few little items sticking out next to the tracks on the beach. So that's the first tool that we could utilize. Okay, so let's try another technique. So this time I'm going to select the patch tool. And this one operates a little bit differently. This is one of the older, actually, kind of painted out tools in Photoshop that you would use to patch up an area or paint out an area that you didn't want. In this case, I've kind of got the sandal footprint right here that I want to get rid of. So I'm going to just select around it. And how this tool then works is it's telling me, hey, I want you to select another area that I can sample content from to replace this with. So I'm going to select that area and drag, and notice I get a selection box, and I'm going to select it down here to kind of this grainy sand. And I'm going to let the computer work. And I'm going to do deselect, so I'm going to go up here and select and do deselect. And notice, you can't really tell that there was ever actually a footprint there. There's a little bit of artifacting around the edge, but otherwise it's successfully taken the texture of this sand and put it up here. And once again, that was the patch tool. Alright, so we've talked about how we utilize the Spot Healing Brush tool, and we've talked about how we use the patch tool, but I want to show you one more that's kind of fun, and that's the Content Aware Move tool. But before we do that, I'm actually going to come back here to our background layer, turn it back on again, and I'm going to duplicate it. So I'm going to go up here to Layer, I'm going to do Duplicate Layer, and I'm going to call this one Beach 2. And I'm actually going to turn off our layer that we've altered, and so notice all my stuff comes back, and I'm going to turn off our background layer that I've got underneath there that we couldn't see anyway. And now I've got everything back that I had before. But I'm going to utilize a different tool. So this time we're going to use, as I pointed out, the Content Aware Move tool. And I want to show you a couple things with it. I can use the Content Aware Move tool to actually select a piece of content and move it somewhere else in my photograph. In this case, I'm just going to move it right up there. Now, sometimes the content aware is really not that content aware. You can get it to work right under certain circumstances, but in backgrounds like this where there's a lot of noise, it's not necessarily smart enough to do what you need it to. I think it's a neat tool, but it's not mature yet. So I'm just going to do edit, and I'm going to do step backward to kind of undo this, and I'm going to do edit, I'm going to do step backward again, and then I'm going to do select, deselect. So it's right back where it was. It's an interesting tool. We could probably use it a lot in future versions of Photoshop. It's just not fully baked yet. That gives you a pretty good sampling of what the different removing items tools are, what the different things that'll let you clone out something in an image. I think that does enough for now. Let's go ahead and see what we can do in the next podcast.